WNST, Towson, Baltimore, and football here in the Charm City as the Cleveland Browns come to town to take on the Ravens at 1 o'clock on Sunday. We've got our tailgate menu together. We're headed to Dog Fest on Saturday. We got things happening around here, but nothing more important than this matchup with the Cleveland Browns that could carry the Ravens to remain undefeated over to London next week. This guy's going to London, I think. He's at every game, as I'm at every game. He is the Baltimore Ravens columnist at BaltimoreRavens.com and one of my incredible mentors that I work very hard to correct every problem that I have in my writing because I know sometimes he's reading it. We welcome John Eisenberg back onto the program. He is B. Moore Eisenberg out on Twitter. And, I said we sort of have mutual surprise at how well this has gone. Correct, John?
Yeah, I mean, I guess you could say surprise. I don't know. There was a little part of me that thought that game in Cincinnati might go well because, I looked at the Bengals lineup and they were having big problems in their offensive line. They lost a couple guys signed elsewhere. They didn't know whether their tackles were any good, and it just seemed like that was really going to be a problem for them. And it wound up being a big problem for them. I mean, it just shut down their offense. The Ravens just shut down that Cincinnati offense entirely, and so that just changed the whole balance of the game. And so, yeah, it's a surprise, but when you look, I mean, it just sort of reinforces what I think some people thought. The Ravens have a pretty good defense, and I think that's going to keep them in most, if not all, games this year.
Well, I think the thing began with Suggs, and obviously he came out to the podium after the game and did his turn. You and I have been at this a long time, you longer than me, and we've seen all of you. I mean, you've written books about Cal Ripken and sort of these iconic people. I've written some books on championships and Ray Lewis and Ed Reed and different people that have come along. Suggs is one of those guys that a game like Sunday makes you sort of look at the back of the bubblegum card and say, now, how long has he been here, and what has he done, and what is he doing? And the thing that I've said all week, and I'll let you expound upon this, is I think Steve Smith got himself into the Hall of Fame because of what he did in Baltimore. Now, it didn't end in a championship. It wasn't this incredible body of work, but it was sort of the body after the body. And I think for people that vote in Hall of Fames, there's always a little something missing on the other end of a Tony Baselli or a Terrell Davis or even a Kirby Puckett. People whose careers were cut a little short or they had a really ugly 3, 4, 5 year, swan song where they kind of went off the edge of the cliff at the end of their career. Boy, Suggs on Sunday gets me thinking that if a guy like you or a guy like me has to go in with a bunch of writers 8, 9, 10 years from now, these are the kinds of efforts late in a career that could really push him forward because he is in the Hall of Very Good, and I think he'll be discussed. But this is the body of work from here moving forward that says he could be a Hall of Famer or might not be a Hall of Famer.
Well, I agree that it could really help him because, yeah, he's close. And whoever was doing the play-by-play, I can't remember, or the color on the broadcast, CBS broadcast Sunday, one of them referred to him as the future Hall of Famer. I was like, oh yeah, really?
Really?
So
I wouldn't refer to him like that. I mean, I wouldn't because I know how hard it is to get in.
Yeah, it's just hard. I mean, like your Steve Smith thing. Listen, it's really hard for receivers. Really hard for receivers, and I think he'll have a struggle. Great player and a great guy. I think maybe he will eventually make it, and certainly what happened here helped him. Suggs, I think, you know what, if we're looking at, he's got 2 sacks already. If you're looking at like a 10-sack season for him, 11-sack season for him, that's really going to help. And I mean, let's face it. I mean, it's not showing signs of slowing down. I mean, last year, I think he got a little tired towards the end of the year. They got some new pups in his position now. They're going to give him a rest. He's still really good at setting the edge on the run game. That's what you talk to Dean Pease. That's what he'll tell you. They got no problem. They love him on 1st and 2nd down. Forget 3rd down. So he's still playing pretty good football. And, sacks are certainly what get attention. And if he gets those, I mean, he is a game changer. So,
well, he's not my favorite player, and I've been on the record, off the record. He probably knows he's not my favorite player. I don't like guys that put bleach on their girls. I mean, it's not my thing, And just in general, just the general demeanor and everything around him over a decade and a half, he's not one of my favorite players. And yet, I stand and marvel at what this represents for him, because it's easy to sit around here and pluck off the Ripkins or the Messinas or the Ogdens or the Ray Lewises or the Ed Reeds. This guy's making a conversation for himself here again at a very advanced state when he's got a ring, he's got a ton of money, he's had hideous, heinous, awful post-30-year-old injuries, and he's been playing on this 300-pound frame for 15 years.
Yeah. So, I think that, and he is one of those players that I think the other players respect him a lot. So I think he does have a chance. You mentioned Messina, and there's a guy that's not going in, and I have a vote there, and I'm voting for him. But I
don't know how you can. If you don't vote for Mike Messina in the Hall of Fame, you didn't watch baseball for 20 years. For me.
Well, that's how I feel, but a lot of people don't. So that's how I feel. Mike Messina's probably right there with Randy Johnson, the best pitcher that I saw with my own two eyes, and especially his time here in Baltimore. Just some amazing games year after year, but nonetheless, he's not coming that close. He may be a guy, though, that gradually gains support.
Look, man, I'll get to baseball in a minute. I know you wrote a book on baseball, but the Orioles have fallen off the cliff here. We're going to talk some purple here while we can, and I definitely will get back to some baseball with you, but this is kind of exciting, right? I mean, 42 runs, 150 yards. Flacco didn't have to do too much, but all of it was really predicated on taking the football away. Not just sacking the quarterback, not making him punt, but literally flipping the field and taking the ball away, and that's something we haven't seen around here in a long time.
Yeah, what was it? 2 years ago, was it 6 interceptions for the entire season?
It was incredible.
That 6 interceptions, had 4 in the first game. So, needless to say, an improvement there, and just great. I mean, but credit to Suggs again. Post-game press conference. Shout out to Ozzie Newsome, as should be the case. I mean, this is what they focused on. They brought in Brandon Carr, they brought in Tony Jefferson. They drafted a first-round, their first-round draft picks, a cornerback. These are good players. They brought in good players. The Ravens have a good secondary, really good. And so, yeah, they should be. The last 2 years, their biggest acquisitions in the free agent market are safeties. And, they got Whittle and Jefferson back there. Jefferson was excellent on Sunday. He might have been the best player on the field. Leads the team in tackles, gets a sack, and completely shuts down Tyler Eifert, who's one of Cincinnati's main weapons. Really, really good stuff from him.
As advertised, we would say, right? I mean, you and I have been at this a long time. Ozzie doesn't go jumping across fences and chasing dogs like Rex Ryan to, sign a Bart Scott at midnight. I mean, that's not the way the Ravens operate. Boy, they targeted him, and they went right after him right away. And, out of the gate, here we are, week 1 on the road, division opponent, shut out, slamming the door on him, and we're talking about the guy they signed at midnight on the first day, right?
Yeah, he's 25. Or 26. I mean, I think that was a really good signing because he's young. He is a young guy. They're not getting a 32-year-old guy. They're hoping to get a couple of years out of. They got a young guy in his prime, and just a really, really good player. And so, yeah, I mean, I think this defense, and this is, I wrote this before the season. I don't think I'm going way out on a limb by any stretch. I think this could be a really good defense. They've been accumulating players over the last few years, and it looks like some of these mid-round guys, are coming to fruition here. I mean, Brent Urban, Matt Judon, guys like that, Correa and Owasu. These guys look like they can play. They can really help, and so it's a homegrown group for the most part, and just a lot younger, faster, aggressive, and there's a lot to like.
He is John Eisenberg. He is B. Moore Eisenberg out on Twitter as well as at BaltimoreRavens.com, where he is writing happy pieces about the Ravens this week, as well as his book, The Streak. And we're going to get to some baseball before it's all over. But let's stay on the field here. Joe Flacco, clearly not, the slinging it, gunslinger. I don't think you want that this week. I don't think you want that against Jacksonville, and I think you hope against Pittsburgh, and certainly, going out to Oakland, you're going to have to put some points up out there, I would think, before it's all over with. But here in the first couple of weeks, he's in week 1 of training camp right now, John.
And it showed. I think it showed. actually that first drive, completed a few passes and looked all right. But,
Danny Woodhead will do that to you, right?
Yeah, I mean, he's open, but as the game wore on, he didn't look too good, and he looked. I mean, the pass, they just didn't need to do it. I mean, he threw an interception to start third quarter, and you have to laugh after that. It was like, okay, we're done. I know all the fans said, okay, why are you throwing the ball? And I don't think they threw it the rest of the game. I mean, they just handed off. So, which is what they should be doing. The real revelation on that side of the ball was the offensive line under scrutiny, just nonstop for months, introducing themselves to each other basically in the huddle there. Who's lining up where? Just a real, crazy show going on up front. But
that's a good group of guys. I mean, we got Austin Howard and Ryan Jensen coming out Wednesday night. I mean, Howard's been in this league. I mean, Jensen's fighting to get a spot in this league. That's a pretty professional group up front that's put the effort in. I certainly held up better than Cincinnati's offensive line did last week.
Well, Jensen's a first-time starter. Hurst is a first-time starter. Now, these are guys that have played. But, certainly you got no problems with Yonda and Ronnie Stanley, and I don't think Howard either. But, you got two-fifths of it there are new guys. And so the goal, what really happened there, and you can go back to the press conference to start the offseason when they took season in review, and Ozzie said, we're going to get bigger up front. We got to get more physical. Well, that is what has happened. That is what all these moves are predicated on. I mean, you stop and look at it. Jensen is there. He's a bigger guy now. He's built himself up. He's a rumbler. Hurst is huge. Austin Howard is just massive. Stanley and Yonda are big guys. I mean, they're bigger up front. They're stronger up front. And that's really the key to this running game that they're talking about. They want it. It's all based on getting, good run blocking, massive guys, being physical. And that's what they're headed towards.
Well, and they might not even try to get too offensive before it's all over. I mean, I see them as if they got a 10-point, 13-point lead here this week, they'll take the air out of the tire every single time and put the defense out there and make you, pin their ears back and go after you and try to ball hawk and turn 13 into 20 because I think that's what they're going to do. They for at least the first month, Flacco's going to hand the ball off at every opportunity, and I don't think anybody should have to apologize for that. I'm fine with that.
I am totally fine with that. And, Joe, he was, I wrote a column about it. Joe was kind of joking, when he said that was boring or whatever it was that he said exactly. He was joking. He just wants to win. But, I do hope that he understands this is where it's going for a while and it's where it should go. Get the lead and just let that defense carry you, run the ball, and I wouldn't change a thing. I would just let this go for a little while.
Part of the measurement here is not just to measure ourselves because we look and see 1-0, pitch the shutout, one on the road, beat a division rival on the road, beat a team that some people thought was better than us on the road. Certainly Vegas thought that as well. And you get that vibe all together, but then you're like, all right, maybe the Bengals stink. Maybe the Steelers aren't as good as we thought. Maybe the Browns are better than we thought. Certainly that is the measurement over the first hour of football on Sunday when these four teams all kind of got together. And the Browns coming here this week as at least perceived to be a better football team.
I think they are a better football team. I mean, they've, I've kind of been interested in this whole Moneyball thing that they're doing there, accumulating draft picks, bringing in a bunch of young guys. I don't know. Hugh Jackson's a pretty good coach, and it's kind of interesting. And so they pretty much started over. They didn't have many players last year. They got a few more this year, and it looks like they're going to have a losing season. There's no doubt, but I think they're pretty feisty. And I was out there at Cleveland last year. That game when the Browns they put up 20 points faster than you can believe. And that was a bad Cleveland team last year. I'm talking on the Ravens. The Ravens came back and won the game. But these games are always pretty close. It will not be a cakewalk.
John Eisenberg's new book is out. It is The Streak, Lou Gehrig, Cal Ripken Jr., and baseball's most historic record. I would hold it up for you, but I lent my copy out to Luke Jones, who is reading along as well. And, John, you've been on a tour this summer with this, and baseball, and certainly the Orioles kept the season alive, at least until last weekend for you. But, I saw you last week, the first press conference of the Ravens, and it just happened to be on September 6th. And it really is amazing locally when you just say September 6th here. It's like September 11th in America, September 6th in Baltimore. For anybody over the age of 30, that that day and that the where you were and who you were with and all of that stuff. Tell me about the book and how you're doing with the book, because I'm sure many, many people have come up to you when you've autographed the book and told you a cool little story along the way, right?
Oh, no doubt. It's definitely a communal thing, and this is the first chapter in this book that I wrote is my recounting of 2131. Hopefully with some fresh perspectives. That I wasn't going to do it unless I could bring fresh voices to the thing, that angles that people had not heard before. So I definitely, when that anniversary came, it was definitely a big thing. I did some stuff online and got quite a response. I mean, it is a secular holiday, baseball holiday in Baltimore, and will always be. And it was really fun to throw some stuff out online to get some interesting response, some pictures and memories, and a lot. And I think that stuff's eternal. It's amazing, the stuff that people hold on to from those 2 days back 22 years ago, and the memories that they have. It's definitely one of those special things. Probably if just about the most memorable sports event that I have covered, and I've covered a lot of them. But how many times are you going to see the game stop for 22 minutes for one of the players to run around the field and shake hands with the fans? It's just never going to happen again, and it was fun to sort of go back over all that with everybody.
It'll also be the longest owner's speech in the history of celebrations either, as Mr. Angelo's clocked in at 18 minutes.
Yeah, well, I don't know that anyone comes close.
They edit that part out of the Masson replay. When they replay it, they edit Peter out.
Yeah, everybody was dying.
Well, the one thing we're not going to be able to do here in this offseason is edit Peter out, and you haven't been able to edit Peter out in 25 years, nor have I in my Peter principles. We talk Ravens, and look, you and I are going to get together hopefully every couple of weeks here through the season and chat about the Ravens. But, what say you for a requiem for the 17 Orioles in a year where nobody ever really thought they were good enough? In the weekend in Cleveland, when we were down in Cincinnati, they were getting swept out of Cleveland on Sunday. It's all but over at this point. And then now what do you do with Machado and Jones and the offseason and Britton and money and more than that? What do you do? Who's going to pitch next year? It's always who's going to pitch next year?
Who's going to pitch? I guess who's going to make the decisions? Dan Duquette has one more year on his contract. There's a lot up at stake, a lot up in the air. No, this team was not quite good enough this year. I think everybody, you go back and see what people were saying, definitely not enough pitching, not enough starting pitching, and an offense that was maybe lacking a little speed, lacking some OBP, lacking some balance, just too predicated on the home run. And that's what happens when you re-sign a Trumbo, and that's the way it goes. But and then Mancini comes on, which is great. Some good things happened this year. Mancini, Scope, Bundy, Castro. There are some things that you can say that's pretty good going forward. I'm not sure whether Gausman's in that group or not, but they do have some huge decisions to make. Machado has been spectacular in the second half of the season. I will continue. The reason I left the Sun, Nestor, is I got tired of writing this column. But if you got a guy like this and he's that good, and you're in the baseball business, if you can't sign him and keep him in town, well, then get out of the business. Because what are we doing here? You're going to have a baseball team. You got Machado and Scope in the middle of your lineup. They're friends. They love playing together. Figure it out. And if you can't do it, sell the team. Because,
I tried to sell the team thing, John, 12 years ago. I had my pride. I got treated like Putin treats Russian journalists. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, what's the point? What is the point? If you have developed these guys, they are great players. They can carry you for years. They're here now. They're young.
But you're also talking about a guy that threw Mike Messina out and did all sorts of stupid stuff 15 years ago.
Well,
we saw that worked out, right? Yeah.
Times changed. They gave Chris Davis $161 million, and who knows? There's money that came from somewhere, right? So
By the way, the Davis signing, you want to talk about that? You want to jump on that a little bit? Because of all the people to give the money to, It really is. I mean, it's more like Glenn Davis now than Chris Davis the rest of the way, isn't it? I mean, he's going to become pretty unpopular around here because he ain't ever going to hit 51 home runs and hit 281 and drive in 125 again. I don't think, right?
Well, I'm not convinced that it's over. It's a bad year for sure. He's not that old yet. And has the money ruined him? I mean, I have no idea. I'm not around the team that much, but I'm not convinced it's over. He's not that old yet. Is it a bad year? Definitely. But, you like to think he can maybe figure it out. What it would be going into year 3, right? Next year. If it's a disaster if this is all you're getting. I mean, that's an obvious statement if ever there was one. It's a disaster if this is all you're getting. I'm not quite ready. It's very easy to say, well, he's done, he's toast, but, blah, blah, blah. But he's young enough to where, he can come back. But and he's the best athlete on the team, so there's no doubt. I mean, he could play any position. He's still great at at first base. So one would hope that he would get his act together a little bit, and maybe a different. I don't know. I mean, I get frustrated watching him bat, and but.
They are a frustrating team, right? They kick the ball around. They don't hustle. It feels like Buck's about closer to the end and to being done, that this doesn't even feel Buckish to me to some degree. Pitchers after pitcher, he's going to the bullpen. Guys can't get guys out. You got Castro can't even cover first base on Monday night. It's crazy with the season on the line.
Yeah, well, but, I think people, and it's no excuse. Believe me, this is no excuse, but I think the players, I think everyone gets a little discouraged when, you're within a couple games of a wild card spot, for better or worse. You're in Cleveland. You're trying to break a 15-game winning streak of the other team, and you're starting Gabriel Ynoa.
Right.
So it's like, seriously. And nothing against that young man, and he did okay. But what I'm saying is it's just, that is a real marker right there, I think, and it's tough for the players because they know what they're matching up against, and it's a tall mountain to climb, really too tall.
You've been at this a long time, and you and I have had private and public conversations about why you're no longer writing Orioles columns at the Baltimore Sun, and you got worn out on it. I've been worn out on it. I don't give him my money. I haven't been to a game all year, proudly. I mean, nothing has sucked me the 3 blocks between here and the stadium that's made me go over to the ballpark this year. I went on opening day. I watch them every night. Where are you a quarter of a century into this, having written a baseball book and done nothing but trying to interact with baseball fans to buy your book and to read about the history of the Orioles? I've done my Peter Principles turn, and quite frankly, everything that I've released online this summer, I haven't written 6 paragraphs, John. All that was written in 2014 before Jen got cancer the first time. I mean, I had that thing ready to go almost 4 years ago now, so I haven't spent a lot of headspace, but I have read what I've written, and I'm always sort of adjusting, Our golf tournament on Tuesday morning, I see Rick Dempsey, Scott McGregor, Ken Singleton, Al Bunbury. I'm amongst all those guys. I'm a little bit of a pariah because of the Oriole Angelos thing, and they all have ties to getting a paycheck from the old man, and it's weird and all of that. I wonder when it's not weird anymore, John. I mean, I don't. Do you have any hope? I mean, do you really think Buck Showalter's going to be here managing 2 years from now, or are they going to Peter Principle him into a job he's not qualified, which is to be a general manager? He's not qualified 2017 to be that. It's not what he does or does at an expert level. And yet, the old man's still hanging around. It doesn't feel like the end's close. It doesn't at all, right? And it doesn't feel like there's going to be a parade time here soon, as maybe 2-3 years ago when the Kansas City thing happened, we at least thought, well, maybe the blind squirrel will find the nut,
Well, I mean, it certainly doesn't look good at the end of a season when, they're going to be around 500. They'll be out of the playoffs, and doesn't look good. I don't know whether Buck will be here. I guess his contract runs out, at the end of next year?
Yeah, they're all tied to the end of next year, which is really why this is an organization that hasn't been great at making structural decisions ever. Had to get Dan Duquette from the Cape Cod Penal League or wherever the hell he was. I mean, they couldn't even get anyone in the industry to take the gig. I mean, every manager in baseball's turned Angelos down over the course of a lifetime. I mean, everyone. Every La Russa, every Girardi, every Valentine. The only guys that ever really took his money after Davey Johnson were Hargrove and now Buck. And the Buck thing has worked out beyond anyone's wildest imagination, but it still didn't happen, and it doesn't feel like it's going to happen. I guess that at some point there's going to be some sort of regime change. If not, a Manny Machado, Scope, Jones, Britton all gone as well, right?
Well, that was signified, that's for sure. I mean, that's probably the time to do a regime change if they do that. I go back to what I say, though. I mean, you got good players. You've homegrown them. They're here. You do have the outline of a nice team. You got some things going. I mean, of course the pieces didn't come together this year. It doesn't look that great. The people I know and trust say that the minor leagues are not quite as bad as they're sometimes portrayed. There are actually some prospects coming through here. We've actually seen a few. They're on the team right now. Austin Hayes, Chance Sisco. There are some players coming through here. What there's not is pitching. So, it's as always. I mean, they're not. I wonder sometimes these teams that just gut everything, and the White Sox, they're doing it every year, and people tell me they're going to be really good in 2 or 3 years. It's like, okay, well, let's see that. These teams that just gut everything and start over. I guess that could happen here, but I don't expect to see that.
He is John Eisenberg. He is B. Moore Eisenberg out on Twitter as well as at BaltimoreRavens.com. It's fun writing the columns after they win and win the way they do. I mean, it really sort of sets up some hope. Like, all right, Cleveland here this week. And, the Harbaugh teams haven't been susceptible to these nasty upsets. You know what I mean? Like, once things start going well, they usually kind of go well. Jacksonville looks like a winnable game over there in London next week. And, it really does feel like there could be some momentum getting back here against Pittsburgh. And, the win in Cincinnati has changed the weather around here dramatically, I think.
No doubt. I looked at these first 5 games of the season as sort of a little entity unto itself, something the Ravens needed to survive. Before they won that game easily on Sunday, that looked like a tough game. I'll be honest, I penciled it in as a loss. Coming home to play Cleveland's a game you have to win. And then the key one to me in this scenario before they won the game was the Jacksonville game. You got to win in London because at Pittsburgh at home, always a tough game. At Oakland, very tough game. Those are good teams. Those are playoff teams. So, you got to come out of that. I thought you can't be 1-4 coming out of that or your season's in trouble. 2-3, that would be bad, but it would be not impossible. 3-2, that's pretty good. 4-1 would be excellent. And so, winning that game really sets you up because you hope they can beat Cleveland. That's 2-0. Jacksonville, they went on the road. Realize the week 3, 4, and 5 opponents, all of them, what did they all do? Pittsburgh, Oakland, and Jacksonville, they all won on the road Sunday. So that leads me to believe maybe they're not so bad. But you win that Jacksonville game, you're 3-0 going into Pittsburgh. I think you're in pretty good shape. You're not going to blow your season in the beginning. You have a chance to make something good happen. So that game in Cincinnati was absolutely key.
John, you've been to London before, have you?
Yes, and I'm actually not going.
You're not going? Okay, I thought you were. Okay.
No, I'm not going. But yeah, no. Thanks to the. Back in the day, the Baltimore Sun. I covered Wimbledon 3 times, Nestor. So yeah,
of course you've been to London. Any tips?
Any tips?
Yeah.
Oh God.
Where are you telling people to go? The Churchill Museum is my tip for everyone. You got to do that.
Well, yeah, the War Years Museum, the one it's underground. That's a great one. That's absolutely a great one. Go see a soccer match. That's what I would say. Go find yourself a Premier League soccer game. Doesn't even have to be the first of it. It can be the championship, the second division. Go see a soccer game. They're awesome. I've had a great time going to games over there over the years. You go early and get yourself a ticket and enjoy yourself.
Have a pint. We're going to do that on Saturday, and we're doing our Emirates Air cable car. John Eisenberg is B. Moore Eisenberg, and out at BaltimoreRavens.com, where you can always enjoy his work. The book is The Streak, and it is readily available. And, John, I will point out to everyone, it makes a perfect holiday gift. How about that?
I appreciate that. Thank you. And it surely does.
Especially if you love Cal Ripken, need a little baseball in the offseason. Big thanks to John Eisenberg, one of my many mentors and big brothers here in the world who keeps me on the straight and narrow from time to time, and we love having him on. Be more Eisenberg at Twitter. You can find me out in the Buy a Toyota Audio Vault 24 hours a day from anywhere in the world on your mobile device. As we earlier said, Ryan Jensen and Austin Howard coming out on Wednesday night, joining us at Greenmount Station for some crab cakes, some fun, some football conversation. It'll be good. We'll also be swabbing for the Bone Marrow Registry. It's all brought to you by our friends at Freedmont Mortgage. Nasty at WNST.net finds me. Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram, streaming live on our Facebook as well as our YouTube WNSTV channel. And headed to London next week. Next Saturday, our big party is at the Fox at XL. That is it's a pub. Some fish and chips and a pint, and then we're going to head on the Emirates Air cable car over the River Thames to the O2 Arena. I feel like a fool for saying that to Eisenberg because I knew he had been to London. I knew he had covered Wimbledon. I probably half-edited some of that stuff back in 1989. So it's like the time I asked Brandon Stokely if he was in Denver the day that the Ravens beat the Broncos, and he said, I caught 5 passes. I am Nestor. We are WNST.net, AM 1570 and WNST Towson, Baltimore. At some point, I'll get my AARP card, and I'll be able to just say, I'm having a senior moment. But not yet. Not yet, anyway. We never stop talking Baltimore sports